Hello, sorry. I didn't realise you'd come on while I was just waiting. I'm currently in conversation with Mrs. Goy and Mrs. Moore. Let me just post onto Teams for you. If you're just joining now, I'm just on Teams, so I can't actually see you. Good morning, Lachlan. Now I'm back. Morning, Shan. Shan, you've already got a slight advantage over everybody because you stayed the other day in 9B's lesson. Hi, Letitia. Lovely to see you. It's lovely to see you all. I'm so sorry. I'm running a bit late this morning. It's all a bit hectic in the Martin household this morning. So excuse the sopping wet hair. I would never teach sopping wet hair. Right. Let's get crack-a-lacking then, gang. Hi, Sam. Student view. There we go. Hey, Braden. Right. We're going to look at question 1 of the Cold War exam, but this is our second one that we have been looking at now. I've nearly finished with the narrative accounts. It's just been a bit hectic and it's no excuses, but it's just my life is a little bit mad at the minute because I'm listening to the British government and the Qatari government, which is great. Not going to lie, just waiting for Uncle Joe. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? So we're going to look at a consequence question today, and they are actually a lot more straightforward than initially you think. Shan may agree or disagree with this. So Shan, if you want to add anything, feel free to in the comments because you have seen this before. These are a lot more straightforward and they're not quite as easy as your narrative account, I would say, but they are a lot shorter than your narrative account. And actually, the minute you get the hang of these consequence questions, they will be absolutely fine. It's just that initial getting your head around of how you need to answer the question, the technique that you need to use. As soon as you've got that technique, you're absolutely fine. So yeah, they'll be absolutely fine. I have given you on Teams and Trim Homework this PowerPoint here, which has been created by me. And as I said last time we looked at an exam question, I did mark this, so I do know what I'm talking about, which you guys anyway. You guys are very good. You guys trust me. Yeah, there is. It's really is straightforward, and the children that lost marks on this particular question had overcomplicated it too much and gone into too much detail, or they've been kind of similar. But the more I talk about it, it's not going to make sense unless we're actually going through it. So a consequence question, I'm going to write one up as a practice, and then I'm going to show you what to do, give you some top tips, and then I'll kind of set you on your way. We'll plan your question together, and then yeah, I'll set you on your way, really. So let's pop this up for you. Let's put it in red, shall we? Okay. So just like I'm so sorry, you're just getting me. I'm having to work around paint currently. My door is again still off, so I'm working around paint and stuff. So I do apologise. So this is worth 8 marks, just like your narrative account. Every single question in your Cold War exam is worth 8 marks. There's 4 of them for you to answer. Although there's 3 style of right, start that again. 3 style of questions, you have to answer 4 of them. All worth 8, so it's worth 32 in the end. So our example question is explain 2 consequences of the Potsdam Conference. Now, when you go for this, you are only going to write 4 sentences. So because I'll explain why. Because you're going to write about two consequences. So one consequence is 4 sentences, two consequence, 4 sentences. So for each consequence, let's write this up. All right, so one consequence equals 4 marks, and you've just got to be nice and straightforward to the point with it. Don't go massively overcomplicated, and you want to just do 4 sentences. Now, when you are writing those sentences, I'm going to do the top tips, and then I'll go over how you do it. There is quite a way to structure it, because you want to sort of leave yourself with room to go somewhere. All right, so your first sentence, so sentence number 1. Okay, sentence number 1 should be a brief statement of the consequence, i.e., you just say what it is. Have I spelled? That's embarrassing. Yeah, I think I spelled brief right now. Anyway, it is quite a. Oh, that doesn't look right. Brief.
I didn't get.
Okay, I spelled it right this time. I do apologise. You want to basically state your consequence and say this is a consequence of this particular. I'll come on to that in a second, Lochran. So you want to give them a brief statement. Yeah, if that's an example of one, Lochran, yes, effectively yes. You want to leave yourself room to go. You don't want to spoil your explanation in this first sentence. Your first sentence is just kind of setting out your consequence that you're going to talk about. It's almost like a subheading. Sentences. Oh, come on. Oh no, it's all going off. Here we go. Your next 2 to 3 sentences, so 2, 3, and 4, will be an explanation of why that is a consequence and how it is a consequence. And you are then giving me specific examples of how that is a consequence. So you are wanting to support your statement with specific evidence. So if you've got a fact, or you've got a figure, or you've got a statistic or a date, now would be the time to include it in these sentences 2 to 4, okay? Because this is sort of like your setup. This is your kind of the meat. So this is your kind of your bread of the sandwich. This is your meat, all right, the main body of it. Now, this is something that a lot of students fall down on, and it is not a criticism of any school or of the country at all. But when you say the word consequence, immediately most students' brain goes to negative. Okay, if I've got a consequence, I've done something bad. And that's because I know at our school we have the C system, which is consequence 1, consequence 2, la 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 la. And then we have the reward system. So they're 2 separate things. You also then usually have, if with your parents or whoever's at home would say, oh, if you don't do that, there'll be consequences. So it's normally associated with something negative. But a consequence is effectively a reaction to an action. Okay, so an action. Let me think. Let me start thinking of something. So, here we go. The coronavirus stopped League Two. Now, a consequence of coronavirus stopping League Two was Plymouth Argyle got promoted. That is a positive consequence of the coronavirus. Coronavirus stopping League Two relegated Stevenage. That is a negative consequence. I'm sorry to use football because I know not many of you are into football, but it's quite an easy one to use. And so last night as well, then we had the League Two playoffs, and Colchester had 1 shot on target, so two shots on target. A positive consequence of the 2 shots on target was a goal. Exeter had no shots on target, and a negative consequence was that they did not score a goal and lost the game. So you've got to remember, when it comes to history and they're talking about a consequence, whether it's in your Cold War, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in whatever, if you're going to talk about a consequence of something, so a reaction to an action, it can be positive or negative or both. God, I missed my lines on my board. So a consequence can be positive or negative. It can be both. There is a real possibility that you could say for the Potsdam Conference, one positive consequence or one consequence of the Potsdam Conference was the UN being set up. That's positive. But one consequence of the Potsdam Conference was that, so we'd have to do 2 of these to complete the question. Exactly that. So you get like 2 little boxes. Frustratingly, I don't have my example questions. Let me just see if I can see one in a textbook. Bear with me. Here we go. I do actually have an example with me, which is quite good. Vagabonds. We don't want to look at vagabonds. Here you go. There you go. You get like a space. It's not printed the lines on this one, but you get consequence 1 and some space, consequence 2 and some space. So you would need to do 2 of those to complete the question. Does that make sense? The final tip that I've got is that when you are looking at the 2 different, you're looking at 2 consequences, they have to be different. I'll deal with that in a minute. Yeah, perfect, Letitia. A box has just fallen down. Okay. Oh my God. They have to be different. You are obviously going to have some sort of similarity in your consequences because you are talking about one event. So they are going to be inherently linked. You can't get away from that. They are going to have some sort of linkage together. But you can't say that Truman and Stalin didn't like each other because Truman didn't tell Stalin about the atomic bomb. You're a legend. Thank you very much. And then you can't say the next consequence is that Truman didn't like Stalin because he was an anti-communist. They're too similar. Okay. You want to try and be as different as possible. Mrs. having a heart attack over a box. In my defense, that box just fell over and I wasn't expecting it. So different consequences. This will all make much more sense if this is what my life has become. This will all make much more sense if I show you what I mean by writing an answer and getting this car crash of a lesson at least on the right road. And my mum just brought me a cup of tea because she's a legend. Oh my God, there's so much rubbish everywhere. Oh no, oh, I've rubbed the wrong thing off. Excellent. Great start. Please bear with me. As we know, this board is not the best. So I'll do an example question for you, and then we will plan the question that I've set you together so that you've got some ideas that you could use for the question that I've set. This example answer is on the PowerPoint for you, but I will go through it. I'm very worried about this cup of tea I've got in front of me. My dogs are now howling outside. Mum? Bonnie is. Oh my gosh. Don't worry, Mum, it's fine. It's gone to pot anyway. Okay, one consequence of the Potsdam Conference was the breakdown of Truman and Stalin's relationship. Brilliant. I've said this relationship has broken down. I've stated it. I've made sure that I've left myself somewhere to go in terms of explanation. Now I need to actually explain it. I think she was in pain, Mum. Hello, Fletcher. You've got my back. I'm so sorry. So my first supporting sentence is Truman was a huge anti-communist. Okay, fact. We know that he didn't like communism. That's a great fact to start off with as some supporting. And entered the Potsdam Conference full of suspicion for Stalin. Then we've got a bit of background in that FDR had previously worked with the USSR leader at the two conferences, but I couldn't fit that in. Okay, so we've got two specific examples there. That FDR had previously worked with Stalin and Truman was an anti-communist. The next sentence then is Truman refused, come on hand, God, it's like a madhouse in here today. Next sentence is Truman refused to tell Stalin about the testing of the A-bomb until the last minute, which made Stalin paranoid. Okay, another fact there is that we know Stalin didn't know about the A-bomb until the last minute with the Potsdam Conference. Great. So we've had a bit of specific example here, a bit of background knowledge that we know, and now another specific example. My final thing is then what it leads to. I'm going to give up in a minute. Boom. This led to the suspicions between the two leaders and ignited the arms race. So we're saying how, will this be on Show My Homework as well? Because I won't remember the example. Yeah, it's on Teams and Show My Homework for you on this PowerPoint here. So this then shows, okay, what I know what happens afterwards. So, okay, we can put a little bit of context in. So we've got these long-term and short-term consequences. But by not telling Stalin that he was testing the A-bomb, Truman starts this arms race. Has anybody got any questions about how I did that? I tried to color code it as I did earlier. But has anybody got any questions about how, if that's not straightforward enough, or if anybody's got any questions at all, I will try and help. Brilliant. Thank you, Letitia, the only one answering me. So you want to state your consequence and then just explain it in very, in as much detail as you can, but not going over 4 sentences. And then you do that all again. So for Potsdam, you could talk about the United Nations, them hunting down. Brilliant. Yeah, kind of. What don't you get, Lachlan? Shan, you get it perfect. You've like had double dose of this. Sorry. So your supporting sentences, it's actually quite easy. It is perfect, Letitia. Yeah, it's one that you just got to sort of put your head into, and it might take a couple of practices or even straight away. You just need to understand how to structure it, and then it makes sense, because it's only 4 marks. You don't want to go over the top. You don't want to do like a narrative account. Just a tad confused. I think it should be right. If I need help, I'll ask. Okay, brilliant. We'll talk amongst yourselves for 2 seconds. I've just rubbed this off the board, and then we'll plan your question that I've actually set you together, so that you've got some ideas, so that I feel like I've done my job a little bit. I didn't mean to rub that off again. Come on. This is my arm workout for the day. This board, man. I'll never buy another one from this seller. Okay, that was quicker than I expected. Let's write the question up. Oh, this is wonky this week. Okay, so the question I set you was explain 2 consequences. Oh, it's making it worse. Explain 2 consequences. Are we allowed to write about the relationship between those 2, but change it a little bit so it's not the same as yours? Yeah, but that's not it's not the same question. But yeah, you'll be effectively, you are going to be able to talk about a relationship in a second. Yeah, with the 2 leaders for the Berlin Wall. But if you want to practice the Potsdam one instead of the Berlin Wall one, that's fine. I don't mind. I'm easy. So here's the Berlin Wall one if you want to attempt it. If you are really struggling with the Berlin Wall one, I will happily accept the Potsdam one. I'm not I'm fine. As long as you're practicing the technique, that's all I'm bothered about. Okay, so Berlin Wall consequences. Da, 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 da. See, this is where I'd be like, what consequences do you think there was? So you could talk about how the impact on the German people, couldn't you? Where families were divided. You can talk about how the relationship between Kennedy and Khrushchev was strained. Now, if you're going to talk about that, you could use the Vienna Summit, which was in 1961. You could use the I am a jam donut speech. And Khrushchev's review of JFK. You could talk about how you had the standoff, didn't you, at the checkpoint? That one would be quite tough, but you could do it. You could talk about the how it stopped the brain drain. Anybody got any ideas in the comments? I'm coming now to you guys. If you've got any ideas, feel free to jump in. I'm not precious about it. You know, I'm not someone that's going to be like, oh, you kids can't put something in. Anyone got anything else? Any thinkings? Could talk about people trying to cross the wall. That will be quite hard. Nope, you're not done. Berliners and the wall, yeah, so the impact on the German people. I think we've kind of covered it. I'll move this forward so you can see. So that if you are using the video, you can either take a screenshot or you can pause it. But if it were me, if I got this question, personally, I would talk about the impact on the German people, how families were divided and people tried to kind of cross the wall and bring that one in there. And then I would talk about the relationship between Khrushchev and JFK, how it was like non-existent because Khrushchev had tried to push him over, and there was the storming out of the Vienna Summit. The standoff as well would be a good one to talk about. You could also talk about that. What do they have in place to stop people getting over the wall? Machine guns, guard dogs, landmines. What else do they have? Anti-climb, paint, railway sleepers, watchtowers, barbed wire. It's called the death strip. That's what they called it, the death strip. So if you tried to get across the Berlin Wall, you were going across the death strip. And apparently the guard dogs were horrific. The guard dogs could kill you as well. So yeah, have a go. If you want to do one and then send it me before you do the next one, that's fine. I am meeting my tutor group at midday for a quiz, but so what do they have? What for a consequence? What did they have to stop people getting over the wall? So you could say one consequence of the Berlin Wall was that people tried to get across the wall. As a result, the Berlin Wall had guns machine guns, guard dogs, watchtowers, and landmines, just to name a few things on the death strip. This was to prevent people from leaving the east to go to the west, and keep the skilled workers in. It's all right, Shan. Therefore, many people died trying to cross the Berlin Wall, and the brain drain came to an end. That would be a good consequence. Did that help, Sam, what I just said? No. Okay, brilliant. Like I said, if you need anything, I have got a quiz with my year 8 at 12 noon. But other than that, I am free as a bird today. Give me a shout if you need anything on email or on Teams, and I will help you in any way I can. Next week is a revision week. So you've got a revision little grid on Wednesday. And then on Friday, I have put together the Cold War boss level quiz. There's 50 questions. It's like a BuzzFeed quiz. So, right, I will see you later. Stay safe. Miss you loads. Bye.